All right, calm down, everyone. Calm down.
People are twerking. It's a crazy time.
Babe, wake up. Coaster face reveal just dropped.
He won't be mad at me saying that.
No one puts Coaster in the corner.
Is this going to be some beatboxing and noise making?
Ohana means family. I've never thought about it in that way. Like that, I'm like mind blown.
I always like to view things in a more major positive way as opposed to down tempo or sulking.
Welcome to Unshut, a place where if at any point you feel like you need to shut the up, don't.
Okay, we're here.
Are we
Mo, what
ready?
up? I'm ready. Absolutely ready.
Amazing. How's your day been so far?
It's been hot. It's definitely been hot. I got back in like 20 minutes ago from a bike ride. I love to go outdoors and ride, and today's like 95 out with humidity, so still recovering from that.
What's your evening typically look like if we wouldn't be doing this podcast today?
After the ride, probably chill out, listen to music, try to get inspired, and then either make food at home or Chipotle. I'm such a fiend for Chipotle.
Sounds amazing. Now, when you say biking, are we talking pedaling or electric? It's 2025. I've got to ask, you know?
Pedaling. So it's funny you say that because I did go to the bike store to get a new bike 3 months ago. The bike that I had before, it was like 7 years old. Electronic bikes were not a thing when I got my previous bike, and now they're everywhere. So I went in there. Yeah, I want a bike. Okay, do you ride on concrete? Yes, I ride on concrete. You should get an electric bike. I don't know about that. I need some exercise. So I went for the actual pedal bike. It's a mountain bike, works on gravel. I like the flexibility of being able to go over grass and get past people. It's fun for me.
Amazing. I'm definitely on the other end. I'm like, I want electric everything, the scooters, all of it.
I just rode my first Lime scooter like 3 weeks ago. Do you guys have those where you are?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I've never done it. They were huge. They've been huge for the last like 7 or 8 years. And I just never downloaded the app to do it, but I had so much fun. It's like the best $15 I've spent the last month.
Dude, totally. I agree. They're some of my favorites, especially when you're downtown. Are you originally from Cincinnati? Is that where you're born and raised?
Actually, no. No. So I'm originally from the eastern shore of Maryland, really close to Ocean City. So that's why the whole like coastal theme is part of my brand persona, just because I spent so much time on the beach. Like that was a big part of my childhood. And then in my 20s, I moved out here to Cincinnati.
Do you go back often or not?
It's been a couple years. My family still lives there, but they'd rather visit here just because, spending 20 years in Maryland, they're not originally from Maryland, so they enjoy coming out here to visit.
Very cool. Well, we're
Yeah.
definitely going to talk about the name here in a little bit, but the way I kind of want to kick off the interview with you is in a previous interview, you mentioned being creative before music, such as drawing. When's the last time you drew?
Ooh, with pencil and paper, probably in a classroom when I should have been taking notes. So it's been some time. It's probably been 4 or 5 years, honestly.
Do you remember how old you were when you started to explore your creativity in this way?
Probably preschool, because I remember growing up, there'd be paintings, like watercolor paintings, drawings that would, be in our house. They'd be framed because my parents they just thought that it was so cool that I would come home and be like, oh, mom, dad, this is what I made. So, I mean, as early as I can remember, probably 3 or 4 years old.
Now, obviously a biased question, right? But
Yes.
would you consider yourself to have been really good at drawing, or is it just a hobby?
I was good. No, I don't know. I mean, I will say there was at one point in middle school, there was a bird exhibit at like a local wildlife exhibit. It was connected with the zoo, the local zoo, and they had kids from local middle schools and high schools draw or do watercolor paintings or oil and canvas paintings for the local wildlife. And there's a seagull that I drew, and they featured it there. I don't know if you had to be talented for them to feature it, but it got there.
I'm going to go with yes for sure.
I appreciate that.
Hell yeah, that's amazing. I definitely want to honor this part of your life and remix it with what you're doing today. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm absolutely ready.
If your childhood was a color, what would it be?
It would be aqua blue.
If your music was a color, what would it be?
Aqua blue.
What song of yours now fits that color you just said?
Ooh. I would say my Clean Bandit Everything But You remix.
Dude, such a good fucking remix for
Thank you.
sure.
I appreciate that.
Of course, if your musical journey inspired a giant piece of art on canvas, what's the first thing that comes to mind when describing what this art piece would look like?
I would say ocean waves and a beach and a lot of smiling faces if there were people there.
So sick. Dude, I love it so much. And this is just us getting started.
I love it. Great
Well,
questions. Those are so fun.
oh man, and like I said, that was just warm up, Coaster. I just kind of want to, get your toes wet a little bit, you know?
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Of course. In another previous interview, you mentioned playing the guitar. Was this the first time you dabbled in anything with music?
Not the first time. So, first time I can remember dabbling in music would be playing a child drum set to country music television. I don't know if I've mentioned this in a previous interview or not, but when I was super young, MTV was booming. They would show the music videos on Saturday mornings from 7 to 10 a.m. or whatever it was, but I wasn't allowed to watch it because those were the bad word songs and the naughty songs, right? Country music television was a little bit more family friendly, so my parents would have that on because they knew that I liked to mess around on the drums. So it'd be Shania Twain and Tim McGraw, and I would just be jamming along with the drums. And then I was probably 7 or 8 years old when I got my first guitar for Christmas, and I kind of got rid of the drum set and just focused on guitar.
Between the drum set and the guitar, was there a part of you as a kid that role played this part of your life?
Actually, yeah. And it's funny, my parents, a couple years ago, they were like, we didn't realize that you were this into it when you were younger. Like, we knew that you liked it, but you were so into baseball and basketball and these other things that were cool and art. And I told them, I think I was in second or third grade, they had this thing that was, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I vividly remember this. I wrote, I want to be a rock star. And it was the first time I had ever said it out loud or written it on a piece of paper. But I do remember doing that, second grade.
Dude, isn't it so crazy how those like little hints of us are truly always there from the very beginning?
Absolutely. I always love finding symbolism in things that remind me of my past or these kind of deja vu moments as well. I love that.
Well, and you totally mentioned your parents just now, and something that I thought was so fascinating about you was how long you gate kept your face and everything. And I think that this was definitely where I got the comment from saying, like, I know it's probably biased, but when it comes to you being very honest about not wanting to rely on your friends and family to listen to your music, you really wanted the art to speak for itself. In regards to those two components there, which we're going to talk about the face a little bit later. So I want to focus on the name. Why Coaster?
So when I was coming up with artist names, I did some research. I remember at the time Louis the Child was big, and they said they came up with their name going on like Wikipedia/random. So I was like, okay, I'll just go on random and try to find something cool. Couldn't find anything cool. Talked with a couple friends of mine from back home in Maryland, and they said, I mean, you should think about something that inspires you, something you've always loved, because this is going to be your name, right? This is going to be at the forefront. So I'm like, okay, like I loved baseball. I loved the beach. What really inspires me musically, though? I had this vivid memory of driving to the beach 3 days a week every summer from the time I was probably a freshman or sophomore in high school until the time I graduated. And I felt like those road trips were some of the best times of my life during those developmental years, getting out of the house, learning new things, new experiences, new friends. And I wanted the music to kind of play into that nostalgia and that excitement for new things that I had on those trips. So I started to write down, okay, beach, sand, coast, water, tide, all these things, and then ending words, whether it's a Z or an S or an ER or just an R, and eventually came up with coaster with an E. I think it was taken by some artist with 10 monthly listeners or someone who had a project 20 years ago. It was already taken. So I just decided to drop the E, thought that it would be cool to put a period at the end, and now we're here. If I'm being honest, sometimes I question whether or not that was the right move because with SEO, people look up coaster, or I'll tell them, yeah, like my music's coaster, and they'll always look it up with an E and it doesn't come up. I think I did make the right choice. I'm still proud of that name.
Well, and I was going to actually say that you may not think it was the right choice, but if anything, it makes people want to deep dive even more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment, and you don't have to tell us which one you were leaning towards, but was there ever a moment during that time where you almost didn't go with COASTR and you went with something else?
Actually, I did go with something else. I released a couple songs on SoundCloud that did absolutely nothing under a different name. It did have to do with the ocean. Not going to say what it was, but technically my first couple remixes came out under a different name. But then when I felt like I had something that was a little bit better quality and I really wanted to put a legitimate artist project behind things, that's when I said, okay, I got to rebrand it, got to change the name. Let's do COASTR.
Do you feel like it's something that you're now able to not have that doubt anymore, where you're like, this is it, I'm owning it and I'm sticking with it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think anyone's going to question decisions that they make themselves related to their artist project more than anyone around them is going to question them. So that's where some of that questioning comes in, but I feel pretty confident day in, day out that this is the project.
Well, I mean, I've got to tell you, not that you need me to toot your own horn, but I loved the name Coaster. And I don't remember exactly which track it was, but my partner sent me your profile on Spotify and he was like, check this music out. And so I checked it out and of course immediately went down the deep dive. But what I loved about the name right off the bat was that it gave me waves, it gave me roller coaster. And when it comes to mixing music, the way you're changing up original tracks, that's what music's supposed to do. It's supposed to take you through a fucking roller coaster. And so before even I went onto your Instagram, I was fascinated with the name because I thought roller coaster or like you said, coast, waves, water. And I'm like, the waves, they'll flip you around. Roller coasters, they'll flip you around too. So in a way, it's crazy how sometimes we do hear artists that aren't so sure about the direction they took, but then you've got people like me who geek out over it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool to kind of have that double entendre of both, the roller coaster and the waves. And, it's open to interpretation as well. I think that's why sometimes I'm a little more quiet because, like you said, I do want to let the music speak. And however it makes you feel, I think you should feel that.
Totally. Well, and obviously we couldn't talk name without phase. How long did you put music out before revealing your face?
Probably a solid 3 or 4 years. Yeah, it was definitely a long time. And I know in that previous interview, you had listened to the fact that I didn't want to have to rely on family, friends, or locals to try to build my brand up. I wanted to, have that full confidence in myself that what I'm doing is able to make an impact outside of the people I know. And I am glad that I did that.
I'm glad too, because we're actually doing an entire segment in honor of that, but I won't tell you much about it yet. I do want to ask though, how early on when you started this project did it become part of the plan for you to eventually reveal your face, or was that completely spontaneous?
It was a little bit spontaneous, I would say. One of my good friends, Leondis, who I do a lot of collaborations with, we talk music all the time. I've been super close with him since we met on the internet like, a little bit after COVID. And, one of the things that really helped him grow was the fact that he is on TikTok and he shows his face and he's relatable and people love the fact that, they want to be his friend. And he would say, "Hey, Coaster, you should show your face. You should get on TikTok. You should do this." I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But we ended up coming out with an original track together and the stars just aligned. It was something that I felt a calling to do. I was ready for this change. Sometimes you just get signs that make you feel like it's the right time to take action.
I wait for you 'cause I need you. I wait for you no matter your time. I wait for you, wait for you, wait for you. I wait for you. I wait for you. I wait for you.
I mean, it's crazy how those are some of the things that you probably wouldn't take into consideration when you commit to something like keeping your name and face out of something. But it's really fascinating how, in my opinion, I do appreciate the fact that you didn't do that because I do think that, like you said, it almost started the trajectory of people wanting to deep dive and know more. And I, in my opinion, thought it was a very genius move. But I'm truly curious, had you have not revealed your face, how would you be doing live shows?
Yeah, that was definitely a tough one because I did want to get more into live shows. I'm a little bit newer on the live show circuit in comparison to some of my peers that have been doing the production work as long as I've been doing it. A lot of these guys were doing, fraternity shows for colleges and, Thursday night bar nights and things like that. I never got into that.
Which is
I don't
fascinating to hear you say that. Sorry to interrupt, but it's fascinating to hear you say that because the clips that I've watched on your Instagram, I'm like, you've got fucking swag, dude. I'm like, it doesn't look like someone that didn't have experience being on stage from those clips that I've seen. So it's fascinating to hear that, you don't feel like you're as experienced. Crazy.
So I was in a band in college. So my buddies and I, we had a cover band. We weren't necessarily good, but we would play parties and on a Saturday night play at somebody's party from 10 to midnight, and we would just cover songs that everybody knew. So I've always felt comfortable in front of a crowd, which I think helped. But I have DJ'd, parties for friends and private events and things like that. It just wasn't something where I was putting my face out as COASTR. I did want to touch on the whole, how would I be playing shows now? Would it be a mask? Would it be something else? I thought about a mask. And, you obviously think of Marshmallow, and there's another DJ now, Pickle, who's crushing it with a mask, and Dead Mouse. And it just seems like there's been a change in the landscape of the industry. People want to have some sort of relationship, I think, with the artists that they listen to. I think things have changed, and I'm willing to adapt. So that was part of the reason why I was okay with going all in, show my face, and let's play some shows.
No, totally. And even outside of DJing, I mean, you even have someone like Sleep Token who, they're a big band and no one knows who they are. And it is extremely fascinating. But I do agree with what you said. I do think that there is this component of feeling like you're connecting with someone by knowing their identity. And I think that there's a misconception that just because you're showing face and you're showing, who you are, you would think that you owe everyone an explanation of your private life, but you can still keep things separate. But I do believe that that connection in feeling like there's a familiar face when you do see an artist, I do think that's very important for sure.
Absolutely. And some of my favorite moments playing live shows for the handful of shows that I've been, grateful enough to be on the lineups for is meeting people after the show, connecting with them. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea like who you were, but I've been listening to your stuff for a while. Like that's the stuff where I go to bed at night and I'm just like, is this real life? So it's very grateful.
Do you get, holy fuck, you're tall? Do you get that a lot in person?
Yeah.
Not that I know how tall you are, you just look tall.
Yeah, no, I do. I played at Breakaway. Leondis brought me on as a special guest for one of our songs together. And we joked beforehand because, I mean, we've hung out a handful of times. And first time we met, that was exactly what he said. Holy F, you're tall. We were joking that, he'd have to have a step stool during his set so that when I came up, I wouldn't overshadow him too much. He won't be mad at me saying that. He's cool with it. But I do get that occasionally. Except I will say this, Afrojack, I was able to stand next to him. Super nice guy. I got to briefly meet him. That guy makes me look tiny. He's tall.
Really?
Yeah, he's
Really?
tall. Yeah.
Or is it safe to say on record you're over 6 feet tall?
Yeah, it's safe to say.
All right, calm down, everyone. Calm down.
Afrojack, I think he's listed at like 6'8" or 6'9". He's a tall guy.
That's crazy. That's like, so I'm only like 5'5", so
Leondis, I don't know what the official data is on him, but I don't know. And I jump a lot too on stage, which I think might make me appear taller.
that could be it. I actually saw some of your tagged photos and I was like, this man is super huge. I mean, I know for me personally, I'm like, I always tell everyone I'm 5'5", but my driver's license says 5'6". I just never corrected it.
You have to do that. Yeah, you have to do that.
Totally, absolutely. I haven't changed my weight on there in like 15 years. Who's got the time, you know?
I still have my Maryland ID just because I think it looks cooler than Ohio.
Don't do it. Don't change it.
Yeah, I won't.
Well, in honor of the face reveal post on Instagram, this is going to be true or false in your comments. I'll read a comment and I want you to tell me if it was really in there or if I made it up. I want to see how your memory is. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready to go.
All right. The first one I have, what a handsome guy. No wonder he makes good music.
I think it's real, and I think it's one of my friends who wrote that.
It's true. Yep, that one was true. The next one I have, yes, boy.
I don't think so. I'm saying false.
It's actually true.
It's in there?
It was, yes.
Okay.
The next one I have, wonder what he will reveal next.
That's in there, I think.
It's false. I made that one up.
Oh no.
The next one I have, babe, wake up. Coaster face reveal just dropped.
That's definitely in there. I remember that one.
It is. The last one I have for you, feet reveal next question mark.
I don't remember that being in there, but maybe it's hidden.
It's not. I made it up.
Okay.
I was so curious to see how many of them you would actually remember because the response on there I thought was really cool. And so when I went to go click on the comments, I'm like, man, like this is the exact type of support you would want when you finally do this after however many years, you know? So sick.
Totally. I felt the same way. Like when they started coming in, the comments started coming in, I was like, oh my God, this is totally the right move. I'm so happy I did this.
Do you get a lot of people in your DMs now that they've seen what you look like that are like, hey, I'm into redheads?
There have been a few. Yeah, there's definitely been a few. I feel like more so once they saw the live clips of me DJing more than anything, because I do feel like once I started DJing, I got more comfortable showing my face on TikTok as well. So I feel like a lot of the content that I'm posting is on TikTok more than it is Instagram. And I get way more TikTok DMs than IG.
Well, just a heads up, I know I'm going to get some personal DMs once I announce this because I do have some listeners who have always been like crazy over all the redheads I've had on the show. It's
Oh
like a
my God.
community of them, dude. It's crazy. They fucking melt over redheads. It's insane.
I love that. I love that.
You're like, yeah, I would have been able to get the same fan club if I wasn't a redhead because I'm over 6 feet tall. Must be nice.
Stroking my ego there, Mo.
You're welcome. I want to go back to a moment where you shared in an interview about being in study hall and watching a YouTube video, which was the moment you decided to go home and give mixing a try. Is that correct, first of all?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. And it has to do with the song Roses by the Chainsmokers.
It was the Chainsmokers. I couldn't remember while I was like recapping my notes, and I'm like, hopefully he says it. But you did that during study hall, right?
Yep, absolutely. Because, I'd ride the bus to school, and I think it was Pandora at the time was big, and, today's top hits or whatever the station was at the time, because I loved pop music. Back then, I still do love pop music, more so than a lot of my dance music peers. But yeah, Roses was obviously a huge song at the time. Same with, Same Old Love by Selena Gomez. And I was just a huge pop listener. And when this video came up of the Chainsmokers, how we made Roses, like, I don't really know much about the Chainsmokers besides, oh yeah, these are the selfie guys. Like they had that song like a year or two ago. And I watched this video and I'm like, this kind of makes sense. So I went home that night, pulled the video up, like took some brief notes on it. I'm like, this kind of makes sense. So I looked up like, what is a digital audio workstation? What is Ableton? Like, trying to figure out how this is actually done. Like, is it actually done in a computer or this is all a front just for the YouTube video? And I just started messing around with it for, 3, 4, 5 months and then really started to take it seriously.
Dude, I thought it was the coolest story ever. And I thought that you did such a good job at painting such a vivid part of your life because all I could remember while I was listening to this interview was, man, like what a vivid memory to share with people about you're in school and you're like shutting the world out. And that's what we do as fucking teenagers, and you go home with a fucking mission and here you are all these years later. It's fucking incredible.
It is cool. It is cool to look back on. Absolutely.
Well, in honor of your musical awakening during study hall, this is officially Schooled by COASTR. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
First of all, if study hall was never a thing, which subject/class would you go back in time and happily ditch for music?
Definitely physics. I was not good at physics.
Science was never really like my worst subject, but when it got to chemistry, a bitch was checked out. I failed it. I actually begged to pass in order for me to graduate, and he passed me.
You must have great selling skills, Mo.
Dude, you know what's funny you say that? Because not only did that happen with that, but that's actually how I got my license. I failed the parallel parking part of it, and so I cried. And he was like, you know what? You look like someone that's going to study. So here we are with a driver's license because
Oh
of
my
it.
God. You're made for this. I love it.
Someone who wants to do what COASTR is doing today, what is the one thing you will tell them in how to get started?
Mess around with the tools that are at your disposal. don't get caught up in the plugins or any, expensive gear that you might see your favorite artist using. If you can master the basic tools, everything else is going to fall into place a couple years later.
Do you think that you're a big advocate on getting on YouTube to figuring shit out because it's how you started as well?
I am. I think nowadays you just need to be careful. You're going to need a little bit of guidance in addition to YouTube because I'll still look at YouTube tutorials and there's definitely times where I see some just misinformation on there and people who don't know any better, they're going to take that as truth. So I would honestly recommend, looking at some videos of production work from like 2015, 16, 17, 18. I feel like the water started to get pretty muddy when COVID hit because everybody kind of went home and said, well, hey, I kind of produce music sometimes. Let me see if I can make a YouTube channel. And there's some like new creators that are fantastic as well. You just have to be a little more careful because it's so saturated.
No, it makes total sense. And that's definitely something that wouldn't have crossed my mind, which is why you're schooling us today. And I'm curious, how does a listener know when you've collaborated with an artist versus just remixing a song, if that makes any sense? And I'll tell you what my next question would have been to give a little bit more context in regards to what's the difference between a platform like SoundCloud versus Spotify. How come there are so many artists who they'll have like a huge playlist on SoundCloud, but it's not on Spotify? Does that mean anything? Does that mean that it was just something you mixed, like without the artist? Or I don't really know, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. This is
Okay.
just the schooling part of the episode that I
Yeah.
wanted some feedback on.
Absolutely. Okay, that makes sense. Great question. So if it is on Spotify, that means it was commissioned by that artist. They had their team and their label reach out to you to come to an agreement to do the remix. So, and it'll usually be labeled as, the main artist would show up first, and then I'm also tagged on the song as a co-artist. And then it's usually labeled COASTR Remix on there. When it comes to SoundCloud, it's pretty much a Wild West free for all, which is cool because, a big part of what I do as well is, take the ego aside and say, let me make a mashup. Like, let me put two songs together that I didn't make myself and present them in a way that people haven't heard. And people love that because when I first started getting into dance music, I was listening to the White Panda and some other mashup groups. And, I'd listen to people's live sets at Lollapalooza and there'd be all these mashups that I thought were cool. I mean, that's something that when I started doing this a long time ago, I love doing it and I still love doing it now and I'm not going to stop.
Well, and I think it's so fascinating that you just said the word mashup because I know for me, this is another thing that really made me a huge fan of yours because I felt like between Spotify and what you were sharing on SoundCloud, it's still you, but you almost get a little bit of different kind of like genre mixing on both platforms. And so I really do feel like it's still Coaster, but listening to you on both platforms, you get so many different more styles. I fucking love that. And I do agree, mashups are fun. And I think you're really fucking good at them. I'm just going to say that.
Thank you. I think they're fun too. It's just interesting because I've noticed over the last 5 years or more, it seems like some artists feel like they outgrow mashups. They might have started doing them or they might have started posting, 30-minute DJ mixes. And then when they get to the point where they're doing their original productions and their official remixes, that kind of goes out the window. But like at the end of the day, music is meant to entertain. Like it should be fun. So like if a mashup is what does the trick and it's fun and I love it, I'm gonna post it. If it's a remix, I'm gonna post it. So
And for those that are listening who are new to the whole like SoundCloud versus Spotify thing, is SoundCloud able to monetize an artist or is that not a thing with SoundCloud?
so I think they can monetize artists on there. I haven't looked into it just because it's a gray area when it comes to posting copyrighted material. And whether it's SoundCloud, Mixcloud, Apple Music, Spotify, no matter what the platform is, they still have these strict copyright deals that they've made with Warner, Universal, and Sony to make sure that people aren't going to take advantage of their artists' songs and just post them there and try to make money. So I've never looked into monetization, but if I were posting 100% original music, I do think that it's available on SoundCloud. I just avoid it like the plague because the mashups are there for people's listening enjoyment, not to make money.
Do you remember what was your first impression of a mashup? Like, can you remember the first time that you listened to one that made you want to dabble into it as well?
I can, but I don't remember what the two songs were. It was a middle school dance, and it's funny because in elementary school, we didn't have dances. Anytime that there was a gathering, it just seemed very vanilla and plain. And then I go to this middle school, and you go to the middle school dance, and it's a free for all. It's crazy. It's wild. The DJ is playing music that I wasn't allowed to listen to, and explicit versions, and people are twerking. It's a crazy time. But I heard these two songs that were all over the radio at the time. I don't know what they were, and they were mixed together flawlessly. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you do that? Like, that's super cool. I actually had Audacity on a laptop when I was in like seventh or eighth grade, and had downloaded just, master files off YouTube using, YouTube to MP3, trying to, mix them in with each other. They weren't very clean or very good because you're limited in Audacity. Some people do a great job in Audacity. I think it's kind of difficult to use, but yeah, I guess you could say that before the Chainsmokers song Roses, maybe it was a middle school dance that got me into mixing music potentially.
The first time that you were like listening to everything you couldn't on MTV, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Seriously.
That's so amazing. What is on your radar today? Like, for example, in regards to bending different genres, for example, what does your ear typically go to when you're trying to do a mashup, if that makes any sense?
For some reason, I always tend to favor songs that have a major progression or some sort of uplifting component to them for the instrumental portion. And then for the vocal, I'm really focused on what the top hits are. I love pop music, so I'm big into, the media-based charts, what's moving on radio. I pay really close attention to that, and I'm trying to make calls on what songs are going to be big in 3 months still, like the day that they come out. Like Man Child, for example. That comes out, has a strong week on radio the first week. I had already posted a mashup of it because I feel like it's going to do well. And, people are streaming it. They love it. They play it in their fitness classes. It's a cool thing. So I'm such a pop head, you could say. I like to combine current pop with sometimes older instrumentals of dance music that I loved before I was making dance music, like Cash Cash, or like an old Audion instrumental, if that makes any sense at all.
Dude, it does. And I am just like so mind blown because I am literally listening to you and I keep thinking, I think it was on SoundCloud where I came across this Tate McRae mix you did or something. Am I making that shit up or no?
I've done a few Tate McRae mixes. Yeah, which one are you thinking of?
I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I do remember thinking like, damn, he has a really good ear for pop music. So hearing you say how much you love pop music, I'm literally thinking in my head like, man, that was really such the impression you gave me, but you have like a really weird, unique way of taking something like pop, which a lot of people would say pop is so generic, right? And turning it not so generic. And I think that's fucking genius. How do you respond to that? Taking something like pop, generic, and not making it generic. How do you respond to that?
I mean, it's a huge compliment. So thank you for that. I think a lot of times pop songs need to be heard in a different way for certain people to fully understand them and really, squeeze more juice out of the lemon per se, which is kind of my remix approach as well for the official remixes that I've been grateful to be commissioned for. I'm typically trying to find a new chord progression, a way where I can present the song in a completely different light that makes people say, wow, this lyric kind of hits harder because it's presented with this different feeling. So yeah, I'm always trying to do something that's a little bit out in left field in comparison to what the original was presented with. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Okay.
And now I'm curious to pick your brain on this on record coaster, because right now, when it comes to like, let's say just pop girlies in general, right? Like
Yeah.
they really are having their moment, right? Sabrina Carpenter, you have Camila Cabello, you've got Tate McRae, you've got so many amazing ones, right? In Coaster's opinion, which one is it safe to say that you think will have longevity in the pop scene 15 years from today?
On record.
On record.
Thanks, Sabrina. I mean, I've been a Sabrina stan, you could say, since she was collaborating with dance artists back in 2017 or 2018. So, like, I've always felt very strongly about her music. Leondis and I were grateful that we had a Taste remix that did really well on TikTok, and that sound was used a lot. And I mean, I wouldn't have done that remix had I not thought her music had that longevity and was just timeless. I really do think that she has a timeless sound. She works with great writers, Amy and Jack, Julian, they're all at the forefront of this, and I've listened to their stuff for the last 10 or 12 years. I feel more strongly about Sabrina than anybody, but one to watch out for is definitely Addison. She's been able to prove with the new rollout that she's here to stay for at least a little while. I think it was a smart move that they kind of put the, introductory 3 or 4 songs that she came out with as singles. They kind of put that on the shelf and rebranded her into something that people can latch onto, and it works. I think she's massively talented. I think she has a brand. I love the music. I think Luca and Elvira are freaking awesome. So yeah, Sabrina's my front runner, and then I'm going to go Addison Rae as kind of like the underdog who's still going to be around.
Dude, I mean, I couldn't agree anymore. Definitely top two right there. Like, it's so spot on. And I do agree with Addison Rae. I will say this. I appreciate how she took her time. I was so pissed at her at first. I'm like, she's taking too long. She's going to miss the mark. But I do think that she's a perfect example of what the wait is worth when you actually take your time and not just roll out this, music just to roll it out when there's intention behind it. Which brings me to my next thing with you. I know that in the last interview that I listened to, you talked about constantly releasing. I think you were at the time of that interview, you were releasing once a week. I feel like that intention of having this time frame and having an idea of what you're doing with your music is so important. Are you still doing that? What's your time frame looking like now in 2025?
Yeah, so I did that once a week thing, which I really felt helped build a community of people around me that were interested in the mashups and going on SoundCloud and not just waiting for something to happen on Spotify. So I was able to build that community, which was awesome. I slowed down a little bit this year to focus more on, using the power of TikTok, doing some more remixes, advancing my production to a place that makes sense in 2025, which you always should reevaluate as an artist, I feel. And just recently, in the past month, I've kind of regained that intention of at least doing something once a month.
Very cool. I want to kind of talk about this real quick because something that just came to mind right now, and it's not in my notes, so I apologize if it's a little bit of a ramble, but I feel like there may be people who will listen and think like lack of vulnerability because, for example, you're not a singer. Right? I feel like there is, for me, in my opinion, there is a way that vulnerability shows because your creative sounds, how you hear a song, is literally putting yourself out there into the world. Can you relate to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kind of like I mentioned earlier, trying to come up with a different world to put a pop song into versus the original way that it might have been released. There's definitely some vulnerability there because when everyone's used to hearing the original, let's say like Ordinary by Alex Warren, for example, that's just an example. It's huge right now. He's crushing it. People are associating that with Valentine's Day and proposals and this love story. If I were to do a remix, which I haven't yet, I did a fun mashup, but I haven't done a remix. But the mashup might play into this. The instrumental that I paired with it, and if I were to do a remix, this is what I would do as well. The progression's a little bit more major. I think the listener would think about their relationship in less of a, happy tears light and more of a let me rock on with my partner as opposed to let me hold hands and cry about the good times with my partner. Vulnerability for me is just simply sharing. I like to view things through the lens of let's be happy about things. Let's rock on. Let's be excited. And I cry, right? Like I'm human. I am vulnerable. But I always like to view things in a more major positive way as opposed to down tempo or sulking. I think that's very long-winded, Mo, but I hope it makes sense.
Dude, I'm literally sitting here thinking how your answer just saved my fucking ass because I felt like I butchered that question, but it was just so spontaneous that came to my mind that I'm like, no, I feel like that's something worth talking about. How it could be perceived that because you're not this like front man vocalist and you're not like writing the lyrics to these songs, there is no vulnerability. But I feel like you said it so perfectly. I feel like stripping a song and changing the meaning to a song that may reflect the moments of your life, what you're trying to convey in that song, that's fucking powerful too.
That's always how I viewed the remixes. I think that's why I can feel so proud of the remixes, even though people might say, oh, it's just a remix. Well, for me, that's how this song has affected my life, that this is my life reimagined into this song.
Well, and I know for me personally, I'll never say, oh, that's just a remix because I'm obviously like a 90s kid, early 2000s kid. And let me tell you something, Coaster. When I was younger, I would wish that remixes that you would see like on music videos and shit, you'd be able to like listen to them like on your CD or, your MP3s. So I live for remixes because, again, it's a different performative part of a song. And without them, you cannot interpret a song differently. So whenever I would watch like Britney Spears do like an entirely different rendition of one of her songs, I literally used to be that kid that's like, I've got to record it on my phone because I'm not going to be able to stream it. You know what I mean? So
How do you feel, Mo? I've got a question for you. How do you feel about remix culture in 2025 versus, let's say, 2015? Because every pop artist would have these remix packs, whether it's Lady Gaga or Britney, there would be these packs, and there might be 7 or 8 remixes. And now it's like, if they do a remix, let's just do one remix. I'm curious what your take is and how you view remixing in 2025. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Curious.
I love it because I do think that there is a little bit of simplification that was missing back then. And it's actually hilarious you say that, Coaster, because something I talked on the episode with Brooke Hogan was how many different versions to one song there were. And for her, it was like really difficult to keep up with. And on that episode, I highlighted a remix part of her song just to see if she could pick up on what remix that was. And so to me, I do think that there is a need for simplification. I don't know that I cared for an artist back in the day who used to put out an entire CD with like the same 10 songs, if that makes sense. So I do appreciate the remixing being just simplified into one song, unless, and hear me out on this, Coaster, because now my Gemini hypocritical side's about to come out,
Let's
like
hear it. Let's hear it.
contradicting everything I just said, because I think if it's done very well, in my opinion, and I'm freestyling right now, Shakira used to be really good at this. She could take one song and have 5 different versions, and they all sounded so different. The reggaeton part, the Spanish version, the English version, sped up version, techno version. She did a killer job with that. Not a lot of artists can. So I guess I just gave you a long-winded yes and no answer. I'm so sorry.
No, it makes sense. I think there were some times it felt like a long time ago where the remix packs were to check off a box rather than serve the song.
Dude, totally. I'm telling you, you keep saving my ass. Like, I couldn't have said that any better for sure. Sometimes my mind works in very mysterious ways. When I found you on Instagram, I saw coaster and the waves emojis and immediately thought Hawaiian roller coaster ride from Lilo and Stitch. Do you know what song I'm talking about, first of all, before we go any further?
I don't. I
Fuck.
don't.
Which is okay because we're not going to do too much with it. But I definitely want to do this with you real quick, okay?
Yes.
If Disney called and said, hey, remix this song from Lilo and Stitch, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think Coaster working on a classic Disney film? Where does your mind go?
For Lilo and Stitch, it's going to be probably purchasing a ukulele that works. The first thing I want to do is think, Lilo and Stitch, that's tropical, it's Hawaiian. Okay, what sounds are people going to associate with Hawaiian and tropical, but also aren't used that much? I feel like we don't hear enough ukulele in music, so I feel like that's perfect. Everything should be unique. So that might be the unique component. And then getting a better understanding of what the usage is going to be, right? Are they going to sync it for a commercial? Are they going to sync it in the trailer? Depending on what the application is of the song, that's definitely going to impact where and how you have this moment, so to speak, in a song that really speaks to people.
Totally. And I will say this, it's totally cool that you didn't know that song because we weren't going to do anything with that song, but it's just to showcase how my mind works. Like I saw that, I thought of that movie and I thought of that soundtrack, which brings me to my next segment. And I'm actually really excited to do this one with you because it's all about picking your brain creatively just to kind of get a deeper version of you as an artist, right? This is putting you on the spot. Since we're talking Lilo and Stitch real quick, I'm going to give you 3 different lines. I want you to describe the beat that would drop after I say the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so is this going to be some beatboxing and noise making coming out of my mouth?
It will, I mean, listen, unless you're really good at that, I'm not, but no, it's not.
Okay.
But basically, what I want to do with you, because again, my mind immediately went to Hawaiian roller coaster ride Lilo and Stitch. You know how, like in songs, there's like a saying or a line, a word, or something right before the beat actually drops, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll
Yep.
give you a line and I want you to tell me what kind of beat, like describe what the music vibe would be
Okay.
after following this line. Are we following?
I'm following. Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay, amazing. There's only three of them, so don't sweat too much,
I,
okay?
I love this so much, by the way. Like, I'm having a fantastic time.
Dude, I appreciate that so much. And I geek out about this because I say this all the time. I cannot do random things to honor your past, who you are, if there is no inspiration to pull from. And immediately when my partner sent me your song, I was like, I've got to shoot my shot, just shoot my shot. And then when I added it to like our master calendar and he saw that I was recording with you, he was like, no fucking way. That is so crazy. So I love it.
I love it too. Okay, so this is like a pre-drop vocal. That's what we call it in EDM. So this is the vocal right before the drop, and then I'm going to explain what's going on in the drop.
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
All right, so the first one I have, obviously the most iconic line. Ohana means family. Family means no one gets left behind.
Well, I'm imagining all these drops as 128 BPM house music. So I'm imagining the music cuts out. Ohana means family. Something means no one gets left behind. And then just kind of a constant beat. Pretty chill though. We're not going, big room house here. It's going to be a more kind of tech house, not very melodic, just imagining one bass note with a constant kick drum.
I love it. A tech house vibe. That's what we're going to call it then.
Tech house vibe for sure on that.
Perfect. The next one I have comes from the iconic scene where Lilo is laying down on the floor and she says, "Leave me alone to die," and then turns up the volume.
This is a Skrillex track for sure. Leave Me Alone to Die. Huge Skrillex synths, kind of like scary monsters and nice sprites. That's what I'm imagining.
Hell yeah. The last one I have, there's a part in this movie where Stitch is getting ready to leave, and Lilo says, "I'll remember you though. I remember everyone that leaves."
Okay, this is going to be a pretty chill drop. When I think about this one, it's like some artists that come to mind are going to be Lost Frequencies or Nora and Pure. Definitely more chill house vibe, I would say.
Dude, amazing. So now you've got some ideas. Whenever Disney hits you up, you know exactly what to do, okay?
I'll have to get you in the credits on that one. We'll cut you in for a few percentage points on that.
Amazing, of course. You're welcome. The last thing I want to ask you, Coaster, real quick is what is to come in 2025 for you? Like, what's on the cards for you? What are you the most looking forward to in regards to music with everything you're doing for the rest of the year?
Definitely working on more original music. Original music is always something that I'm focusing on, especially the last couple years. But getting the songs to a point where I feel they're finished is tougher for me. I don't know if we're going to see original songs in 2025. 2026, definitely going to see some original music. But again, the songs don't have to be perfect for me, but they have to be in a spot to where the vibe that I'm creating can be easily understandable by the listener. So yeah, pretty much every day working on original tracks, but then also, having fun with it, right? Mashups on the side. If I come up with a cool remix for a new song that I think is a fantastic pop song, I'm also going to post that. For me, there's really no rules or regs, or I have no limitations on who I work with as long as I think they're, decent people, decent humans. I'm open to working with them, whether they're smaller than me, bigger than me, doesn't really matter. It just music should be fun.
Dude, totally. And I appreciate you saying how it's like, listen, it may even be a year from now, because that's something we were just kind of talking about a little bit ago when it came to like the Addison Rae projects, is that do not pump shit out just to pump it out, because then you lose track of the intention. You lose focus on what it is that you're trying to convey within your project. And so the fact that you're aware about that makes me so excited to see what you come up with, because the fact that you're not going to just put anything out for the sake of putting out original music, makes me feel like, all right, it's gonna be fucking worth waiting for. So I'm
Absolutely.
pumped.
It's funny because I was having this discussion with one of my friends because they're so excited. They're like, Coaster, you got to put out these songs. Like, we're waiting. We want this music. Like, we love the remixes too, but we want original music. No, it's not done yet. It's not done. It's not there. It's never going to be there, Coaster. Like, you keep saying it's not there. But I came up with this analogy, and you can tell me if this is like some mansplain analogy that's not cool. You ever played this? You ever played the game of telephone when you were a kid, where it's like
Yes.
there's one person has this, concept or story, right? And we could consider that to have, 100% quality of the story, right? And as it goes down the line, let's say the 10th person comes up, the quality of the story is like 5%. Like
Totally.
it's completely different. When I really thought about this, it's like making music is kind of like a game of telephone, but in the opposite way. So I kind of know the vibe or what I want the result to be. And then each step of the way that I'm building, it goes from like 5% to 10% to 20. And then once it gets around like 85 to 90%, the story is good enough. Like you'll understand the story, you'll understand the song. And I'm fine with letting go if it's there. But if it's at like 65% where it's a little bit blurry and could be, interpreted in too many different ways or people just don't understand, it doesn't really grab them, then it's not ready. It doesn't have to be at 100%, but it just has to be at a point where the story is understandable as the story is intended to be, if that makes sense.
Dude, you could literally write an entire fucking book about that and I would read it. That was the most beautiful way to put it. I've never thought about it in that way. Like that, I'm like mind blown. I'm like, this is exactly why I think these conversations are so important because just with that alone, Coaster, we just got a glimpse of how your process works. And it's crazy when it's simplified in that way, but to you, it's jumbled because you're the one doing it, right? But I love the telephone analogy, dude. That's like fucking genius.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard, I feel, as an outsider. And I'm this way with like jobs that my friends have and careers that they have. As an outsider, you don't get it. All you see as the outsider is the result. Nothing else makes sense. So yeah, when I was really thinking about it, I was like, this is kind of a cool analogy.
Dude, it's fucking genius. Now, just to pick your brain a little bit more, when you
Absolutely.
get to that 65%, right? Right before you're getting ready to catapult that song, that project, to get it to where Coaster is so comfortable to letting it out. Who has that stamp of approval for Coaster to say, yes, it's at 65, and this is how we're going to get it to 99.9 at least?
There's definitely a select few. It's interesting because, most of my songs are remixes up to this point. So for all the remix work, everything you hear on Spotify, that's me, start to finish, mixing, mastering, everything. It's me. So I don't have another technical ear to actually go in the mix and like fix stuff, but I'm still sending all this stuff. Once it's at, like you said, 50%, 60%, this is being sent to my friend Ryan, Leondis, my friend Gabe, sometimes the MC4D guys. There's a handful of people that I'm good friends with and trust that they're going to tell me if it's bad. They're going to pick it apart and tell me everything I need to know about that song to move it forward. But one piece of advice a lot of these guys have given me about the original music is do the same process, get it to that point where, we think it's all good, but then get it to somebody else that can actually go in the project. They haven't spent 100 hours on the song. They can, more clearly get rid of things that aren't needed. Absolutely going to get my original stuff mixed, mastered by somebody else. But yeah, it's a good question. I really only trust 5 or 6 people to give me that straight feedback. And there's certain people, I'm sure that you've noticed this in your career too. Anything you do is gold. Oh, this is fantastic. This is great. Those are the last people I'm trying to send my stuff to because yeah, I mean, everything's great to them. So you really got to be careful and make sure that you can send to friends that are willing to tell you if it's bad, because I'm not offended by that, right? You have to hear that, harsh criticism to get better. And I think, going back to what we said when we started this, not having my close friends involved when I was starting out, when I'm getting some of this more rough, like, hey man, this sucks, that kind of feedback. It's nice when your friends don't know about it because you don't have a dozen people around you saying, Coaster kind of stinks. All right, there's no room for that. So
I mean, I have so much more I could say, but I do want to circle back to two things real quick. Very
yeah.
quickly, was that your personality when you were an athlete as well? Very like open to that constructive criticism. I mean, the fact that you weren't trying to rely on your parents to fucking stroke your ego in order for you to feel good about what you were putting out, were you like that as an athlete?
Yeah, definitely. I think it helped me and it hurt me a little bit. I think in terms of coachability, when I had good coaches that actually cared about the sport, they put the time in, they respect the people who show up and listen, which there's not many people who listen when you're 10, 11 years old, right? You know, Timmy's playing in the sand while the coach is trying to go over something. I think when I had great coaches, it was great. I mean, I'm a good listener. I like to think I'm a good listener and try to take people's feedback when it's critical. But then on the other hand, sometimes as a listener, you can come off to people as quiet and easy to throw in the corner, and we don't have to worry about him because he won't say anything. So I think there's both sides of that. But at the end of the day, right, sports when you're in high school, or unless you're going to play college or pro, they're mostly meant to develop you into being a team player outside of the sport.
Totally, dude. And all I can say about that is no one puts Coaster in the corner. Do you get the movie reference or no?
No, oh my gosh,
Fuck.
no. This is embarrassing because my friends know that I'm literally the worst person to reference movies with. I don't know why that is. I just have not seen or retained a lot of the movies I've watched.
Well, that was just a little Dirty Dancing plug. It's an old school movie,
Oh,
but
I know that movie, but only because of the one scene that's famous.
the lifting, right?
Yeah,
There's an iconic line in there that says, "No one puts baby in the corner." And so,
I
see,
love it.
I embarrass myself too, but I want to circle back to this real quick because we talked about people out there maybe having the perception that you're not vulnerable because you're not an artist, because they just think remix is right. I was so nervous that you were not going to agree to come on the show because your music primarily was remixed. And all I kept thinking was, no, there's an artist there. I know it. I know it, especially after going on SoundCloud. And I want to say this to you before we wrap it up because I feel like it's such a good reminder for you, especially getting ready to start dabbling into your own original music. The way that you answered the whole telephone analogy, that's what an artist does. You are an artist. And I felt like to me, I was covered in goosebumps while you were talking about that because I'm thinking that's why I wrote him. That's why I invited him on. It wasn't just to talk about what's your favorite song to remix. It's because there is an artist there and I fucking knew it. And the way you explained that analogy, I was like, fuck, I could just hang up now and be good. Like that was so fucking perfect. So just a little reminder for you on record. Listen to this if you ever feel discouraged. You are an artist, Coaster. You are.
I appreciate that, and definitely means a lot hearing that from you. And hopefully, that little tidbit can impact another artist who's starting out and maybe lost and hasn't really had anything to work for them yet, and they're still trying to find it. Hopefully, there's something inspiring in that. If you have the artist mindset, you've got it. It's not going to go away.
100%. And see, here you are schooling everyone. This has turned into a study hall, session in the future because I know that this is going to inspire so many people. So thank you so much for giving us the time and thanks for sharing your passion and your knowledge. I think that this is exactly what I was hoping for, and it doesn't always happen. I do think that there are a lot of artists out there who aren't willing to put themselves in the forefront of their art, and the fact that you're doing that already speaks volumes. So thank you so much for your time. Just lastly, please tell everyone where to stalk your life, especially for those that are listening, not watching. He's over 6 foot. He's redhead. You can go stalk his life now.
Yeah, thank you, Mo, for having me. Absolutely had a blast. So thank you so much.
Of course. I'm waiting for your outro. Tell everyone where to find you.
Oh, I thought this was like, okay, let me stop the screen share. So, so it's going to be at Coaster Music on every social channel that exists. And you can go to my website, coastermusic.com. SoundCloud, everything is going to be slash Coaster Music.
Amazing. Thank you so much again for giving me the time. We'll definitely be in touch. And if you're ever out in Austin, if I'm ever back in Ohio, I'll keep you posted. Would love to come see a show. Would love to meet you in person for sure.
I would love that too. Yep. Guest list for sure.
Absolutely. VIP, baby. Here we go.
VIP, artist access. You're there.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your time, dude. We'll definitely be in touch, all right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mo.
You got it. Take care. Hey, if you've made it this far, don't forget to follow the socials on the screen or in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. See you next week.